All right, good afternoon and welcome to today's Transfer Thursday, hosted by your EDI Cares hosts. My name is Terry Green. I've been here in EDI Cares for a whole lot of years, and my co-host, Obi Quarless, who's been here for a whole lot of months. So he's got all the expertise. He's been over at, worked for PLU and for UW Tacoma. And so we've got a whole lot of good transfer information coming from the both private and the public four-year schools. So today we're going to be going over all kinds of things, personal statements, applications, talk about different things and ways, articulation agreements, and major specific admissions, how to be major ready. I mean, all these terms that you hear, we're going to go over all those today. So first, I'd like to welcome to the show our own Obi Quarless.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes, good to have you, Obi. So, you know, we've been working with transfer students here quite some time, and things are, you know, sometimes a little fuzzy on our end. You know, there's things that change kind of at the four-year school from time to time, and we're always kind of having to kind of keep up with that. So why don't you go through some of the tips and tricks and things that you think would be super beneficial and helpful to our students transferring to a four-year college?
Sure. Yeah, transferring is a next step in your education. People transfer for different reasons at different times. One of the things I want to get into today is talk about the stigmas around transfer, and to make sure that the things you hear about transferring, the things you hear about going to a university from peers, that you feel confident and have a vision for where you place you're at in your education now and be successful moving to the university. A lot of it is around timing. A lot of it is around being advantageous and seeking advising. And then obviously being a successful student in the classroom, that goes without saying. But a lot of this is about timing, awareness, and preparation. Let's see. Want to jump to the next slide? Obviously, before we kick off everything, in any event that we do, we want to make sure we do a thorough introduction to who we are as a team. This Transfer Thursday presentation is part of the Pierce College EDI Cares team. Those letters stand for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and then College Access, Retention, and Engagement Services. So this presentation is all about promoting your success, obviously at Pierce, and then we're taking it to a next step, going to university. At EDI Cares, we offer additional college support for our most resilient students, including first generation, low income, and students of color. We have several programs on campus that fall under different federal grant funding systems and supports. So the three that we offer are TRIO SSS, TRIO Student Support Services, which is a federal program from the Department of Education. We also offer the ASPIRE program, which is Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders reaching their potential through education. And one of our newest programs for college students is referred to as LSAMP, which is the Lewis Stokes Alliances for Minority Participation in Math and STEM Sciences. You can check us out online. Obviously, we have a ton of stuff, just some of the notes down there. We're in the Cascade Building 301, all the way in the back corner. Got to kind of, we have our own little nest back there where we hang out and serve students. Everything that we're talking about or anything that you ever heard of with our transfer assistance, personal growth and support, financial assistance, multicultural programs, off-campus trips, everything that we have is free. So we want you to come check us out. And if you like what you hear today, we'd love to get you connected and get more personal services as well.
Excellent. Thank you, OB. Yes, you know, our our students are saving a lot of money here at Pierce College. Definitely a great way to become major ready. And so what are some of the first steps a student takes? You know, they come to Pierce and then they join EDI Cares and they're working with this. What are some of the steps a student needs to really be looking at early on as far as what they need to look at and be ready for so there's a smooth transfer?
Sure. So if you are looking to complete a bachelor's degree and you're at Pierce College, you are already on your trajectory towards a bachelor's degree. The work that you're doing at Pierce College is, quote, transferable and is part of a 4-year trajectory towards a 4-year degree. And when I say 4-year degree, that's a bachelor's degree. It's referred to as 4 years because it typically takes 4 years of full-time study to complete a degree. So when they say your 4-year degree, they're meaning 4 years full-time. Now, obviously, if you take breaks, got to retake classes, you miss some classes and got to do something over, obviously that can be faster. If you double up on classes or take summers, that could be faster than a 4-year degree. But generally, we're talking about 4 years. So the 2 years, when we say a 2-year degree or associates at Pierce College, that is the first 2 of 4 years. So if you are considering a bachelor's degree, you are already doing the work now. It's not a magic snap your fingers at the end of the 2nd year, now you're a university student. So everything that you're doing is in line for that trajectory. So that's important to put that context out there. Number 2 is, which is probably one of the hardest things, is discerning what you want to do and where you want to go. Being undecided, if there's any students in the room that are, maybe this is their first couple quarters in college, maybe they're still wavering between a couple ideas, that is perfectly fine. I don't know what the statistic is now, but I know it's a rising number every year of undecided. It's constantly growing on the body because obviously job demands, career interests, the labor market, global pandemics, maybe you might have heard of COVID-19. These kind of things change your mindset on a daily, monthly, seasonal times, and you need to react and be ready to adjust. And sometimes people are hard and fast, like, hey, I want to be a doctor. I've known I want to be a cardiologist since I was in 3rd grade, and that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm on. Sure, shout out to you. Sometimes people, you know, they thought they were doing one thing, and then maybe you got a job, or maybe you heard about something else. Maybe you tried something, you worked at your uncle's business for a summer, now you want to switch degrees, anything that can come to mind. So the biggest thing you can do is continually refine your vision. And I'm probably going to say this a couple times throughout this session, but continually refine your vision, because transferring and pursuing a bachelor's degree, and the process to bridge the gap of transferring from one school to another is only as valuable as the vision and the goals you have for yourself. A lot of this is extremely personal. It's extremely customized to what you're looking for and to what you see based on the credits you have, the GP you have, your ability to move, your ability to switch or move out of state. All these parameters come down and create a customized situation for you. So the more time that you invest, and it's not not an overnight decision. It's not one conversation and then you have your whole life figured out. It's continually using the resources at the college. Who would that be? Starting off with the team with EDI Cares, the retention managers, the faculty advisors like Mr. Terry Green here to my side, and any of the other professors that have industry knowledge and have a long time awareness of what's out there for students that are interested in things like you're interested. Get that knowledge from them. Talk to us, tap in, and that's only going to refine what you want to do for yourself. So then when you get closer to that finish line of that 2-year mark, ideally that's the point where you really want to make that jump, everything is already going to be laid out because you've put in that back end work of that knowledge of self, knowledge of what's important to you, so that when it comes time to make a decision to switching schools, because there are thousands of options nationally and internationally. So the more aware you are of yourself is the more confident you'll be of the opportunities and eventually the decision that you make.
Yeah, when you said thousands of options of transfer schools, it made me think of the WUI Agreement, where there's a lot of opportunity to transfer to a lot of the Western states and not even have to worry about paying the full out-of-state tuition. And I think that's one of the kind of overlooked options. We've had several students in our EDI Cares program. I have one over there now at the University of Hawaii. And you know, nobody thinks that maybe they can afford that, because how can I afford that? But the WUI Agreement certainly knocks the tuition down to just above in-state tuition. And sometimes in-state tuition in other states can be equal to or even less than what in-state tuition in the state of Washington is, based on their tax structure. So yeah, the WUI Agreement, there is a website for that. And you know, if you're interested in going out of state and paying in-state type tuition, another reason to join EDI Cares. We'll show you how that works.
Yeah, hopefully we get that in the chat. I love you brought that, the WUI, which is Western Undergraduate Exchange. So that's a type of partnership where several institutions in the West, you know, California, Oregon, Alaska, Hawaii, I think it goes as far as like Wyoming, kind of Colorado, that area. They've all agreed that if you're part of a partner institution, that they'll take your credits and have kind of a unified tuition as well, so that you can get your in-state rate at a different state. So it's kind of a partnership. So it's a cool way to find more opportunities. Again, we have a condensed amount of time. So these are so many opportunities and things that come out here, and we might just kind of skip across a few, but I just use that as another plug for to come and find us so that we can find the exact opportunities for you. So if I may jump back into some of the outline of some of the key topics for today. I want to make sure we hit around transferring and what that looks like. I want to make sure everyone knows, you know, what is a transfer student? What does it mean to transfer, and when should I transfer? A transfer student, number one, is anyone who, after high school, attends a college or university and then switches to a second college or university. Again, I'll say that again. After high school, you start at one college or university, and then at some point you switch to another college or university. I want to emphasize the point being after high school. For any running start students in here that may be completing their associate's degree while attending high school, even with 2 years of college credits during high school as a running start student, when you decide to, quote, transfer and go to a university or continue on, you are technically still considered a first-year student. And you might say, well, I did 2 years of college, I'm a junior. So you might hear phrases like first-year student with advanced standing, first-year student with junior standing. And that's actually a bonus perk, because you get the perk of having college credits already. But then in terms of the university, you're considered a first-year student, which has major financial implications, mostly because you, as a first-year student, are going to get financial aid packages that come in 4-year bundles of financial aid. And there's actually a different set of funding, and at majority of schools, a larger set of funding for what's called first-year students versus transfer students. So that's kind of a little perk. If you're a transfer student, you can, and let's go on, moving on. What does it mean to transfer? Again, just means switching from one college to another. Not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just, that's the definitive definition. When should you transfer? That is a very customized and individual answer. If you complete your associate's degree and you're at the end of 2 years, again, and if that goal is that 4-year bachelor's and you've done 2 already, you've kind of come to the end of the road, and you may want to say, I want to continue at a school that has my specific major and go more in depth at a university. That's a point to transfer. Can anyone maybe share or think of another reason why at some point in your life, if you're going to college, why you want to switch from one school to another? Maybe I give just about 10 seconds in the chat, or just to see what pops up. A reason why you want to switch from one school to another. I see, yes, closer to home. Maybe you moved far away. Maybe you said, I want to go to school in Pennsylvania and realized it was too cold and too far away, and you wanted to come back and come home. That's another reason. Maybe for personal illnesses or death in the family, or you just didn't like it where you moved. Anytime you choose to switch schools, that is a personal decision and should be done in the consultation with an advisor. Anything you do around academics or changing your degree plans or changing, you should talk to an advisor. Just sliding back, one more thing to what does it mean to transfer? When you're switching schools as well, you're also switching kind of academic contracts, so to speak, and you are agreeing to the different degree requirements at a different school than the school you're at. With the partnerships and articulation agreements, it's possible that the school you're at and the school you want to go to are already talking to each other and have it all figured out. If you're transferring within the state of Washington, we have what's called the direct transfer agreement that with the completion of an associate's degree guarantees you at least junior standing with 90 credits at a university. So that's positive. If you're looking to transfer out of state, sometimes those different states don't talk necessarily the same way. If you're going to school from quarters to semesters, that's also something to factor in and make sure your curriculums and things line up. So that's just another plug, another way for me to plug and say, come talk to us and talk to your advisor about where you're at in your process. Let's see, the next point, and I have the 4 seasons here, fall, winter, spring, and summer. This is a visual representation to remind everyone out here of how deadline-driven the transfer process is. Every school is going to have a set of deadlines of when they allow transfer students to apply, and then also which quarters they allow transfer students to start. The most obvious and routine start date for a transfer student is going to be the fall quarter. As you've probably been used to since kindergarten, starting school in September and then going to June with summer break, summer being kind of optional with extra credits or with maybe makeup classes. So that fall, winter, spring rotation is very, very customary and something that you should try to center yourself around the best as possible. Now, obviously things happen and a school is more likely gladly going to be willing to take you any quarter, winter, spring, or summer. But as we'll get into, and something I want to talk about now, but we'll talk about it continuing on, is transferring into your specific field of study also will most likely take 2 parts to finish. Two applications to become a successful transfer student into your desired academic discipline. One meaning, the first being the general transfer application, the second being your specific application to the major or academic discipline you want to study at the university. Sometimes these can be, and I'm gonna show you an example later, that these can be 2 distinct processes. One being the general process saying, hey, I've been to another school, maybe I've been to 5 colleges already, and I want to come to University of blank. So you have to gather all your materials from all the other schools you've been to and present it to the university to say, I'm ready to come to your school. That's step 1. Number 2 is then you're saying, I actually want to, in the case of University of Washington, let's say, I want to go to the Paul Allen School of Computer Science, one of the most competitive computer science schools in the country, I want to study computer science. So then the computer science department is going to look at your materials specifically, the faculty in that department specifically looking at your math, computer science grades specifically, and then making a decision if you can come into this major. So you can get into the school and then also have to take the next step to get into your desired major. And all of this is very deadline driven as well. Anything else come to mind around that, Terry, for you?
You know, applications come out real early. And so definitely start your application early. In other words, you can go in and make an account. You can start putting your name, address, social security number, all the basic stuff in there and get all the easy stuff in there. And then all you have left is maybe, some tougher questions, maybe a personal statement. And with that, you can make an appointment with us, EDI Cares, and we can help you with either the personal statement or understanding some of the questions that you might have with the application. And so we also can do what's called a waiver, give you a letter for a waiver of your application fee. There's no guarantee it'll work, but for most of the schools it will. It's kind of a verification that you're in a federal TRIO program and that we're asking to have the application fee waived. So that may save you $60. Well, that doesn't happen just instantaneously. It takes a couple of days for it to get approved. And so again, start early, also submit early, and we'll help you make through that. So definitely take a look at deadlines. And if you miss a deadline, certainly there's always the next one, but definitely get in touch with your advisors, both here and at the school you're going to early on. A lot of times folks will wait till they're a junior to ask any questions in their major. And I think that's too late. If you were a freshman at any college like PLU or UW-Tacoma, a freshman, you wouldn't wait till you're a junior to ask any questions about what you need to do from somebody in your major. And so there's two types of advisors like at UW-Tacoma. There's entry advisors, and then there's advisors in the actual department of the School of Business or School of Social Work or School of Nursing or whatever. And so get in touch with them, let them know you're coming, and tell them you're excited, and they will help you out. The admissions advisors, they will tell you things more general, like, well, you need so much foreign language and so much math and whatever. This is how you get into the university. But yeah, make sure you see your content advisor also early on, and don't wait till you get there to ask questions.
Sure, and I'm glad you brought that up. That takes me back to my previous experience professionally as an admissions counselor and transfer advisor, both at Pacific Lutheran University and at University of Washington, Tacoma, where some of the most memorable students that I can think of, even years later, are the ones that showed that initiative early and came a year or even 2 years before they actually wanted to come and started that relationship. Every college or university in the United States has what's called an admissions office. This office is responsible for reviewing and generating applications for enrollment. Within that office, every college and university has a specific person that their sole job is to answer questions from people that either attend Pierce Community College or are in Washington State. That is their specific job. And they are ready to answer and guide you into their university with all the appropriate answers and questions. This is not a secret process that you have to feel like it's some type of trick or some type of riddle you have to solve. Or I used earlier I was talking and used the phrase escape room. I don't know if any of you have done the escape room where you got to figure out all the tricks to get out and how to unlock the door and everything. It's not one of those situations. This is something where They want to help you. Some schools do it better than others. That's very true. And some make it easier and have the information more readily available. Some a little still working on it. But overall, there are people there to help you. And so that can also pay dividends in the long term when, there's a saying out there that goes, closed mouths don't get fed. And that's a metaphor to describe that, if you never ask or you never open your mouth, literally, and ask or share your needs and be honest with other people about what you need or where you're at, no one can ever help you. No one can ever say, oh, you needed help with financial aid? I didn't know that. Oh, you needed help with moving from Washington to Texas? Oh, you should have told me there's a scholarship for that. I didn't know you were coming from out of state. I didn't know that. So sharing your story early and getting on a university's radar, getting on a specific department's radar can be fruitful. And it also shows that you're serious. There are, for example, University of Washington, Seattle, they get tens of thousands of admission or applications per year. They're so big that the admission office doesn't even go recruit students. They just show up and people just apply. And I just say as one example, but in that process, when there's so many applications, eventually things start to blur together. And you see kind of the same thing. And when you're I'm talking from a reader's perspective, you start to see the same thing and you see the same kind of average grades with average participation, with average interest. And then, you see a name pop up and you're like, oh, I remember when that student came. They came and took a campus tour. And I remember having a good conversation with them and their dad. Wow, now they actually applied 6 months later. That person's real serious. It's a different level. And I'm not saying go around to every college and smooze up and go visit everywhere just to, kind of get kudo points. But, we're all human and we all remember what, and you have a chance to make an impact. And this transfer application is really, and as we segue to talk about the application specifically, this is your only opportunity to share your interests, passions, academic performance, and everything about you in one piece of paper, really, one digital application. Somebody is going to make a decision about your future that you've never even met. So attention to detail and moving forward is very, very important. So I'm glad we have on the screen now the transfer application, the personal statement, and then major specific applications, as I talked about before. What I'd like to highlight as an example is jumping into the application. I want to use the University of Washington, Tacoma as a reference point, just to highlight and maybe walk through a few examples. I'm going to do a screen share myself. Right here and show you kind of what this all means from kind of the first step. So you're like, hey, I think I want to go to University of Washington, Tacoma. There is a page in the admissions office called for transfer students. And if I wanted to apply, I will just hit apply now. And this begins the admissions process. It's important to know, again, the type of application that you're doing. If you're a running start student and you're still in high school, you will be starting as a freshman, or first year student is another language. Most people in the room are going to be transfer students if you are after high school. And you might see things like graduate or international. Graduate referring to after a bachelor's degree. Everything through a bachelor's degree is called undergraduate studies. And then after a bachelor's degree, like a master's or PhD or a doctorate, it's called graduate studies. So we're not really concerned about that right now. We're really focused on the be transferred. Oh, and lastly, if you're an international student, meaning that you are visiting the United States from another home country to study in college, you will complete an international application, either as a freshman or transfer student.
Hey,
So if you're a
Obi,
domestic United States national or citizen, you will do the transfer application. How to apply. I'm using this as a general example, but a lot of this is very transferable to most universities. You need to complete that first general transfer application, which will include a personal statement. Schools now are making standardized test scores optional. So some might require them, meaning SAT or ACT test scores. If you're a first-year student, most of the time that's going to be a requirement. It gets optional for transfer students. If you had really good test scores, obviously sending them can help, it won't hurt, or it broadens someone's understanding of your academic performance. If maybe you didn't take the test or didn't do so well, University of Washington's giving you the option to hold off. And just as some context, a lot of this is based out of a growing amount of research on how unhelpful or unpredictable someone's performance on a standardized test is towards their performance in college. So as more of that research gets popular and more mainstream, more universities are choosing to not allow that. And then submitting your transcripts. Transcripts are going to be your official academic record from any school you've ever attended. And this is important because sometimes I've worked with students that say, I went to Pierce College, or I went to Eastern Washington first, and I failed my freshman year. But then I came back home to Pierce and I've been doing really, really well. So I just want to send them my Pierce College grades. And unfortunately, that won't complete your application. You have to send your entire all of your academic records. Even if it means holding your pride and you didn't do so well, you need to send that. You can't slip by. There are ways and databases where they will scan your entire academic enrollment across the country and find out where you've been to school and request those transcripts. So if you have a poor or some bad history that you're trying to hide, there is a place to make up for that in the application that I'm going to talk about. Here's an example of the dates. And again, if you are looking, I'm going to pull up this other page, review for transfer students. If you're looking to transfer, you might see some language like, if you want to start in the autumn quarter, you need to apply by March 15th for priority application. Priority, or you might hear that term across colleges, priority, meaning that if you apply by the priority deadline, the university promises that they will at least read your application. Anything after the priority deadline, a school reserves the right to not even read your application, or they might already reach their deadline quote or their quota for enrollment, and they might just say, we're closed. We're not taking your application anymore. So meeting the priority deadlines is very important to guarantee that you get an admissions decision. And that applies for each of the quarters that you want to start. And then also we'll talk about jumping that meeting, the program deadline is also important. And that could be a different deadline than, that could be before or after the general admission deadline. I know that's confusing, but the reality is that each major or each department can set their own priority deadline as well. And that just goes, that they just determine what's best for their team and what works best. So doing your research at least 6 months in advance, probably a year in advance, to be honest, of what schools you want to go to, what's the application deadline for general transfer, and then what's the priority deadline for my specific major, if needed.
Hey, Ovi, can I interject
yes,
really
please.
quick?
Yes.
So two things. One, we've got some student questions that have popped up in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Let's go to that, please.
You're good. And then also just on that last point that you made, I think it's really critical, right? That if you're applying for that general admission, you might be waiting, up to almost near the deadline of the program specific admission application. It doesn't mean that you should wait, right?
Correct.
Until they
So
are telling you you're accepted. You should be preparing in the meantime.
absolutely, you should be preparing. And the earlier is always better because for if the program is very competitive or what is referred to as capacity constrained, meaning they only take a certain number of computer science students or they only take a certain number of business students each quarter. You want to get in and get your stuff reviewed because they're not waiting till the end to review applications either necessarily. So earlier is always better. It's kind of that early bird gets the worm. And applying early can also give the university time to respond back to you if there's any errors or things that they need to follow up on. That could mean maybe you're missing in a transcript. That could mean they could request a personal interview just to get to know you better because you're a candidate that maybe is right on the bubble. They can only make those decisions if you give them the time to make those decisions and help you out. Again, it's not a trick on how this works, but doing things early and being proactive only helps your situation.
Yep. Thanks for those reminders. Terry, I did send you those questions in the chat. Would you mind reading them out so we can get those addressed, or maybe you can try and answer them too?
All right, question. Do international students go through the same process as admission as national students? That's a good question. I would imagine that the best thing to do would be to ask their admissions department, because if they're already here, they may already have some things done that need to be done. I know there's a visa and some things, and so they may be able to just use the regular application, but I'm going to bet that it's different for each school. So I would definitely check with the admissions department.
Overall, they're mostly the same process. The only thing that's a little different for international students is number one, getting that F1 clearance with the visa. Also, number two, there's an English language proficiency that needs to be demonstrated to continue on to the university. In the case of University of Washington, Tacoma, that can be met several ways. The easiest way is getting a B or higher in 2 college level English composition classes is the fastest way. That's built into your studies already. There's tests you can take, but it's really the visa status, and then the English is kind of the next piece for international students, but everything else that I'm talking about is gonna apply as well.
Good, okay, another question here. I am about to finish my first quarter at Pierce this week, and I applied for financial aid help early in the fall and received it. Do I have to apply for FAFSA again for winter season? That's a good question. So FAFSA, you apply once per year, and it's for an entire school year. And at Pierce College, we're a summer first institution. And so summer quarter is our first quarter. Fall would be our second, and then our last quarter, of course, would be spring. And so until next summer, you won't have to worry about your financial aid. However, next summer's financial aid already came out a month and 2 days ago, approximately. November, or no, 2 months ago. Was it 2 months ago already? October, it's been 2 months. It's been out over 2 months. Came out on October 1st. So every October 1st, you're applying for the next school year. And so definitely, if you do plan to go next summer or beyond, go in and do your 22-23 FAFSA. That's ready to go.
And lastly, I did see that we have one of our other EDI Cares retention managers here in the room with us. the wonderful Rosalinda Castro also dropped something into the chat. Rosalinda, would you mind reiterating that announcement for us?
Yes, UW Tacoma is all of the UWs are hosting a presentation next on the 15th at 6 o'clock via Zoom. You do have to register online. They'll send you a link just like you did here for ours, but it's connecting you with the different advisors from all 3 campuses. So I saw that a few people were thinking about transferring to UW. So I definitely recommend checking that link out and registering for that the presentation that they're hosting. So it's a tri-campus event, and so all of them. And with that, if you are applying to UW, it's different applications. They have different deadlines. So that's something else to be aware of, that, and the applications might look a little bit differently depending on where you're going. So make sure that those are things that you're keeping ahead, because I think like UW Bothell is like February 1st. You have February 15th for UW Seattle. And I think March 15th for UW Tacoma, if you're planning to attend in the autumn or fall quarter. So definitely making sure that you're paying attention to those small things. And but if there's like more specific questions that maybe we can't answer, I'm definitely hitting up that presentation too.
One quick note about those applications and the majors. Some folks try to, sneak into UW via a different major because maybe they think that because they ask what your second major is. And so some people say, well, I don't know if I'm going to get into my first major because of whatever. So I'm going to say I'm going to do this other major because I know I can get into that one. And then once I'm there, I'm going to switch majors. And I just want you to know that that's not something that is highly looked at as a good way to do it, because UW does not allow you to sneak in on some other major and switch when you get there. And so I know it's been kind of a thing I've heard students say, well, how about if I just apply as a history major? When I get there, I'll apply for the science. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. If they are asking you what your second major is, you have to be ready to do your second major. So if you put down a second major and they bring you in on your second major, you're expected to do your second major. So that's a FYI there.
Right. And another part to that too is the fact that if you're looking to be admitted to something, you want to show that you are overly committed or interested. So if it's your number one, say it's your number one, and then let the cards fall where they fall. That another kind of part about switching majors is even switching campuses for University of Washington. Same. Some people think, oh, I'm going to get into University of Washington Tacoma because maybe it's, some would say, easier in some respects. I don't want to get too much into that or not. And then I'm going to get into Tacoma and then switch to Seattle maybe. And actually, the statistical data, you are less likely to get into University of Washington, Seattle from one UW campus to the other. You're most successful going directly from the community college you're at to the school you want to go to. University to university transfer, inter-UW transfer is actually the smallest amount of transfer students within the entire UW system. So I digress a little bit. I didn't want to get too much and make it the University of Washington show or the Washington State show, but we're using these two schools as platforms for you to have some context of things to look for at your intended school as well. A lot of this is going to be set up the same. I see a question about extracurricular. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to jump into that now with the application, if I may, as part of it with extracurriculars. So in the application, this is a live application for University of Washington Tacoma to transfer. The first thing that they're going to ask you in most majors, because it's kind of critical to your whole application process, is what degree. I picked, for whatever reason, as a sample, I'm going to reselect, I picked engineering. And as soon as I picked engineering, it told me that my only option to start is autumn 2022, because this program only takes students in the fall of each year. And it's telling me very big and bold. It's competitive, and applications are only accepted for autumn quarter, meaning the autumn quarter deadline, which is March 15th. There's a separate major application, and I should go to this website to do that. If I try to go there right now, it actually will not work because they have not made the application live. They have a specific window when they will open, and they have a specific window when they will close. So again, paying attention and getting some of that information as early as possible will only help with your planning. These tabs on the left are very common tabs that you'll see: personal information, put in your address, your family information, if anyone in your family has gone to college or not. That's important because universities and looking for students that are first in their family to go to college. We support students in EDI cares that are first in the family because of the specific challenges that come with that. You may have to do your test scores, educational background. Everything in these first, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tabs is already been determined by you. I mean, that's just your life, it's your history. There's not a lot of thinking. It should be pretty obvious what to put and how to answer those questions. The biggest part of the work in a college application is going to be in the only part that you truly have control of and can craft your own voice, which is the writing section. The writing section, and they even put a note here, I found a strong wish to tell your story. So this is all about your story and who you are and why are you seeking and feel ready to attend a university right now. And the questions are very simple. This one for university is: describe how your personal, professional, and educational experiences have shaped your academic, career, personal goals. And how will UW-Tacoma help you attain these goals? So it's really about you and why do you want to go to school? And it's personal. There's no right or wrong answer. You can tell in years of experience of reading thousands of essays over time, I can tell you that the people that really are genuine and a little more vulnerable are memorable, and being memorable puts you one more step towards admission and puts you one more step towards even merit scholarships. So there are lots of ways to go about it, but it should be really tied to why do you want to do engineering? Like, so if I picked engineering, I should have a really compelling story or some key detail in my life that shows a reader or shows the admission office that I'm ready to do engineering. Maybe it says, maybe I say, you know, I fell in love with engineering when I got my first Lego set when I was 7, and I've just been hooked on building things. And let me tell you how I've progressed in my life. And that led to me going to the robotics club in high school. And that led to me being a state championship robotics engineer. And I really want to go to UW-Tacoma because I want to stay close to my home to support my mom. She's a single parent, and I think being home to support her makes it easiest for me to go to school. And that's my story to go to UW-Tacoma. It's only in 650 words. That's less than a page, single space. So it's not a life story, a life autobiography. It's very specific to the point. And they give you the tips. Tell us who you are, be specific, and it should reflect your maturity. Now, the second part to this, there's a question that asks, there's a couple things. Someone asked about extracurricular. This is where I want to challenge you to think about your involvement beyond just being involved at school. Oftentimes, students will get locked into, you know, did I join a club at school? Did I have a formal title like club vice president? Or did I receive, you know, academic dean's list and stuff related to school? That's not all of your involvement. If you look at your 24 hours in a day and 7 days a week, where in your life are you involved in your community? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where have you shown academic achievement? Now, obviously that one's a little more school specific, but the other three with professional achievement, commitment to equity and inclusion efforts, these are things that are most likely outside of your school. If If you are raising a family, all these questions are things of trying to get to the answer. How have you been spending your time? That is really the context of these different ways of asking questions. How have you been spending your time? The universities are looking to bring in students that are vibrant and diverse and have complex and rich experiences and will make your classroom and make the campus vibrant. If everyone was just a 4.0 student and just said, I go to class and then I do 2 hours of homework in the library and then I go to sleep, college would be pretty boring. It wouldn't be much to look at. So when you're talking about involvement, it's okay to be honest and say, you know what, I haven't really involved in school because I'm raising 3 kids myself. I'm involved in my church. That's where I do my community involvement. That's where I promote equity and inclusion by doing outreach in the community, or I volunteer at a certain place. So break down that silo of traditional titles or formal things and really ask yourself all the ways that you just spend your time and what that means for you. Community involvement. I remember one person I talked about their involvement online in an online gaming community and what that meant for them and how they were involved, and even down to some equity and inclusion efforts as well. So all of those things can come to mind. Lastly, kind of in the personal statement piece, this is really important too, your academic performance. If you have less than a 2.5 GPA, it's strongly encouraged that you have some additional writing and some additional statements to describe why or how. Earlier, I gave the example of a student who may have went to Eastern Washington University, failed their first year, and then came back and is maybe at Pierce now doing very well. So even if you have over a 2.5, if you have any type of multi-quarter stretch in your career where things didn't go well, maybe it's because of COVID-19 and you didn't do well in online classes. Maybe it's because you moved too far away and it was, just got homesick and just were kind of dealing with some mental issues. Any of those things are important to share because it helps give the admissions, the team, some context of who you are, or maybe who you were, and now how did that help transition to who you are so that they can make an informed guess on who you will be when you get to the university. So the whole application is about trying to connect the dots on who you started off early in your academic career, who you were, kind of where you're at more in the current state, and then they are making a guess in your last 2 to 3 years of university, what type of student you'll be when you get to your next destination. So having a low pass where maybe you didn't do well is not a deal breaker to your admission. But it's how you articulate yourself, and it takes some vulnerability. It will take a level of courage to maybe explain some things, but I promise you, you're not the only one, you're not the first time, and it's only will better your situation. And it gives me the tools as an admissions staff in my former professional experience. When I had someone on the fence that maybe started rough, but they're doing well, so it's kind of 50-50, I can read into that. I might pick up the phone and actually call you and say, you know what? I want to put in a recommendation for you to be admitted, but I want to have a conversation. I need to ask you a few questions based on what you wrote, and I just want to know a little bit more. If you do a good job at advocating for self, it allows me to do my job better to advocate for you as well. And that's, all right.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead. No, yeah.
A couple things in the chat here, and then we'll wrap it up here. One of the questions was, what is the acceptance rate for UW Seattle? And the 3-year average admit rate for freshmen is 60%. And so for transfer students in Washington State community colleges, the average 3-year transfer admit rate is 76%. And so for every 4 students here at Pierce that apply, 3 of them get into UW Seattle. And so I've been to some conferences at the UW for advising, haven't been recently, but one thing they did say one of the last times I was up there was that they will not admit anybody that they believe won't be successful. And so if you're admitted, they believe that you will graduate there from the UW. Another question, if you don't have the resources to go visit out-of-state universities before applying to transfer, how would you recommend to start the relationship with the admissions committee or show your interest in the school?
Yeah, that's a good one. You can, more schools are becoming more savvy with virtual tours that are like arguably even better than going in person, because they can show you the whole building without having you interrupt. So there's like these 3D immersive tours you can do and campus tours. Even just starting that email connection on finding out who's that specific admission advisor for your state or for your city, you know, however they break it down. You can begin to have that relationship. And there's even opportunity where schools will even pay for you to come visit if you are at least competitive enough to a certain degree, or maybe 3.5 GPA or higher. They might send you $500. I know, for example, locally in Pacific Lutheran University, they give you $1,000 scholarship just if you come in person and take a tour, no obligation. Take an hour tour, that's $1,000 for the hour that you just earned off tuition. So if you inquire early, that gives the school opportunity to respond back and let you know. Whitworth University in Spokane, for students of color, will send up a bus from Tacoma and drive a bus of 50 students to the university to do an overnight trip for the weekend and send you back, all expenses paid. So again, it's just that early inquiry so that you can find out ways, and they may even have funding to get you there.
All right. Well, we're right at time now. And so thank you, Obi, for all of your great insight there that you brought to us from PLU and UW Tacoma and beyond. And, you know, just a couple things I just want to throw out there at the end. Look at the schools. A lot of schools around here have transfer pages that have like a specific things of what you need just for Pierce College. PLU has a site called Pierce to PLU. UW Tacoma, you know, has pages where they have sheets that say, this is what you take at Pierce for this major. And so, you know, course equivalency guides to see what you can, how do you translate this class you need at UW into a class at Pierce College? You would look at a transfer guide for that. And so just keep that in mind, that there's these transfer guides, there's these course equivalency guides. And these are all things that have four-year websites have that you need to look at. And so make sure that you do, and also come to us, and we can also help kind of find those sites and get those rolling for you, so you're not missing out. Because the last thing you want to do is the way I did it and transfer and go, oh, wow, I needed to have this class for this and all this. And yeah, so you don't want to learn the hard way. That's one reason I am here helping people out. I don't want anybody to learn the hard way like I did. So anyway, well, again, thank you, Obi, and thank you to all of our guests today for joining us today for our second and last edition of the Fall 2021 Transfer Thursday series. And so we look forward to seeing you again in the new year for some additional Transfer Thursdays. And again, thank you. Join EDI, will help you out. And hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time on Transfer Thursdays.